Hello, I'm Rick Philbrick with the Loxahatchee River District in Jupiter, Florida. We're going to go over how to do preventative maintenance on a low-pressure sewer system. I'll be touching on some key components and explaining what can and cannot happen or situations that you might run into with each component. We'll briefly touch on things and hopefully at least get a basic 101 start on what is involved in doing preventative maintenance on one of these systems. Once you've arrived on scene, if you have the capability and you need to check and make sure that this system has been installed on your GIS system. So the first thing I would do is come to pull up the screen that's going to show me whether or not it has been logged into the GIS system. In other words, if it's been marked on the map. This enables your technicians to find it easier should it fail in the middle of the night or for any reason. You're also verifying to your IT department that they have installed it on the map. So we've verified that it is here now. And the next part is to go ahead and physically start checking the components of the system. So we start right at the street level, and the first thing we're going to do is start at the isolation valve. So you're going to need a couple of things. You're going to need a couple of screwdrivers or pry bars to take the cap off. And you're going to need your, in this case, quarter turn valve key. Keep in mind that depending on the major components of your systems, you're going to need different types of keys. In our system, the majority of what we have are the quarter turn valve keys. We also have a few areas where there are corporations stops installed. They're normally for potable water systems, but for some reason they were put them on it. So I also have a split wrench type of valve key for those. And I also have a plastic valve key for the plastic valves in the right-of-way valve box. We'll go over that in just a minute. So the first thing we're going to do is go over and locate our valve box. This one is very well maintained and there was no problem locating it. We'll go over how to locate them with the emergency marking or the electronic. That would be verified good as far as I'm concerned. Put the cap back on. Okay, we're done with this valve key so we can put it back. The next thing we do is verify that it does have an electronic marking system on it. Okay, that indicates it does have a marker on it, so we can verify that. And while we have this out, since the next move is to go to the service box, we'll go ahead and check that emergency or electric marking system as well. That noise indicates that there is one there. So our two key components, the isolation valve and the service valve, we are verifying that they do have markers on them. Okay, we'll put this away because we're not going to need it again for right now. All right. Homemade valve key for plastic valves. Very important item, saves the back and the knees. Cut it. Okay, the next component of the system that you're going to check is the service valve box. This is a key component, and the things we're going to be looking for is proper operation, but we also want to look for any type of signs of damage or things that are going to go bad. So with either a pair of channel locks, or I prefer to use the pry bar, we come over. We've already verified that it has an EMS on it. So we're going to go ahead and open the box. We look inside, and the first thing we want to look for is any wetness or any signs of that it's not working properly. This one has no indication that it's not, so we're just going to give this this valve a little turn or two. Remember, these are plastic valves, so be very gentle and very careful with them. You don't want to create a problem where there isn't one. And that thing's operating quite nicely. So I would say that that's good. So we cover that back up, and that goes on our checklist as done. All right, the next area we're going to move to is up near the system itself. And we're going to need some tools to do that. So to save us a bunch of trips on going back and forth, what we're going to do is grab the stuff that I would normally carry whenever I work on one of these systems. And it's all subjective. Everybody has their own way of doing things. But I contain everything into a box that I can sit my lazy butt on while I'm doing the electrical part of it. Okay. You've located your system near the house, and you just basically, the most important part of this is a visual inspection when you walk up on it. Just like when you walk up to your car, you look at the tires, make sure that none of them are flat, that there's nothing leaking underneath. It's much the same with these things. We've chosen this location because it's really non-problematic. But I will touch on some of the things you may encounter, because every one of these situations is different. Every home is different. Every station is maintained differently. This is wide open, which is why we chose this location, because it gives you a good example. The first thing I would do, obviously, is take the locks off of both the wet well and the control panel. And the reason for that is because we're going to access both of those, but it's also giving me an opportunity to check the condition of these locks. The main thing is that it's operable, obviously. If not, there's you can lubricate it and make sure that when you walk away from this, when you're finished with your PM, that it is in good working condition. So I removed the lock from the well. I always place those there. And from the control panel, place them there out of my way. Open the well. And the control panel, and just get a general condition. Okay. Just from the indication of the level inside of it, it looks like it's operating properly, but we're going to double box to look for signs of leakage. Okay, and while I've got that open, I'm going to go ahead and verify that both of these valves are operable. Sometimes they're a little tight. Okay, and there's no cap or anything to indicate there's a problem there. All right, so as far as I'm concerned, that would be good. It will be obvious if there's a problem, and not very pleasant. Okay, so the next thing we would want to do, obviously, is clean this well up. That does a couple of things. It enables us to check the operation of it by running it in automatic mode while we bring the level up with the garden hose. So I'm going to turn the HOA and the panel to off, just for the time being. Cut. Okay, part of your arsenal of tools that you should use, obviously, is a garden hose, and I keep a sprayer in my box to give me a little bit more velocity in situations like this where the water pressure is low. And what I'm doing now is basically just cleaning everything up. I'm mixing up the solids to make sure that you know, the slurry as it is gets pumped out, and that everything's clean, and because a clean wet well is a happy wet well. I spray the floats off, all the wires that I may have to touch here in a little while, in case there's anything wrong. And I'm just making sure that everything is pumping the way that it should. Now the best way to do that is to turn your HOA to off and let the level come up to the high level. And then that you have light and the audible. And also check the silence button. Okay? So that, because the water slow. I'm also kind of looking around to make sure that all are still visible that was inspected. For example, though this is responsibility, the 4-inch coming from the house and into the, to always advise them if you have contact with the homeowner, to the homeowner and to us. So that way, the same thing with the 1¼ line. From right here outside the valve box at the emergency pump tap to the service valve as a homeowner responsibility. So while you're walking up through this area, you just want to kind of look around and see if you see any evidence of leakage. It'll sprinkler line leak, only a lot smellier. We're still waiting for our level to come up here. So looking things over inside the panel. We're going to do a lot more on the panel here in a few minutes. But again, a visual inspection is always your first indicator that there may be a problem. Or inside the panel, this is a capacitor pack. I want to look for any damage to them, any blackening, any signs of arcing, shorting, anything. If there is something wrong, generally it will be very obvious. You'll see that loaded or black. While we're talking about that, and while I'm waiting for this, I always get the things out. I'm going to need your 2 screwdrivers and your amp probe. This is your best friend. You should never touch anything inside the panel or do electrical item. They come in a lot of different because it and again, it's your best friend because it's going to save your life. There's a lot enough to let you know that it's not something you want to mess with. So we've got all of there, and high level. We do that for a couple of reasons. Number one, and the audible alarm are both working. Now that we've enabled us out using too much owner's water out in our well and our things to make sure that there were a stuff that you would already know about it before. What we're going to do is go ahead and move the water source and turn it on. Remember, when you're out here doing one of these things, you're very abusive as far as your hold of all, and make sure professional and polite, but also be aware of things like leaving a gallon of water that's going to increase your bill. No leakage on the union here, and that's it. Things that you don't really want to know about hanging on the bottom. That's good. Rack is secure, no broken hooks, and you can get your floats and see that they're nice and limber and do not need to be changed out. And that it's working. Should be in good shape, and if necessary, change them. If it's has been performed, it's probably a good idea while you're here and change those out and some fresh ones on there. That'll save of a float falling and functioning either not working or causing your pump to run excessively. So everything in the station looks to be. Now we can go ahead and close that just for safety purposes so nobody steps backwards into it. Okay, the next process we're going to do is go ahead and check our control panel. Earlier we looked at it and just did a quick inspection to see if there was any evidence there was a problem in it. Once again, any type of arcing, any type of water damage, any type of component failure. Again, we're notified, and our people probably would already know about that. But during preventative maintenance, it's important to check all these things to make sure it's in good working order. So the first thing we want to do is shut all of our breakers down. The 120 convenience receptacle, which is normally off, and of course the pump breaker. Okay, and then most importantly, pull your disconnect. That severs power to the control panel, and it makes sure that it ends in here. You want to verify, however, and get it and check your voltage. As you can see, it's 0, which means we're safe to go ahead and do the next step of this. Yeah. to go station. Now you do that because with heat and cold, expansion and contraction, they do have a tendency to loosen up on you. You don't have to over tighten. You can cause more damage by over tightening them and flattening the wire out than you can if. So just give it a check for a quick up, as it were, to make it everything. And while you're doing that, you want to look at your wires that are connecting to these points. Make sure, or anything that's going to ultimately cause the panel to not work properly, or worse yet, catch on fire and burn someone's house down. So real quickly, we go through every one of these and just make sure that these are your 3 pump leads, and we'll about that here in just a minute. Okay, you check them, and you check your neutral switch. Here. Now, since it's fairly new, that in working order, and that's not to say that sometimes you just have to kind of gauge what it is you need to do with each thing. Now I'm checking the float wires, making sure all of them are secure. Feel safe reaching into this panel. I kind of give each wire a little bit of a tug to make sure that it's in there. Okay, full inspection's been done. We've tightened all up. And you restore power in case something should come on and explode and fix. And now, once again, we're going to turn it back up. And again, check your power to make sure your voltage is correct. 120 across each leg, 240 at the main. Okay, we've verified that. Now what we're going to do is go ahead and do the amp draw. I think the amp draw is an important part of this entire operation. The reason being, amperage will indicate to you if there's one or one that's getting ready to start. If you have a leak, draw will be fairly low. If you have something that's compromised the pump, a blockage in the line or something caught in the impeller, your amperage is the first indication that something is station. Get a funky or sure type of and take it to the up and investigate that further. Okay, I always start on the red lead, and what we're going to do is just give it a bump, and what we're actually looking for is somewhere between, say, 5.8 and is on this. And we've got 6.1, which is just about perfect. Then move to the black lead on the other side. On this one, we're going to be looking for somewhere between 9 and 11. And we've got, on the white lead, you're going to get your highest draw. This one is going to be between 11 and 15. Usually between 12 and 15, depending on who you talk to. That's right about in the middle. We'll call that about 13.5. Everything appears to be in very good condition on this control panel. Once we've done that and we're fairly confident, what I normally do is go ahead and open the well back up, run an automatic by simply switching it back over, automatic, and I sub down to make sure everything is shutting off when it should. While that's happening, you just kind of give it a visual inspection, and you can start, packing up your stuff. Okay, so basically we are preventative maintenance. Again, this was a station that's, I've tried to provide you you're going to run into where very well maintained, all kinds of piled on top of it. But we tell these people, it's behooving them to leave the area and the station, your owners that listen to you and consider this system an eyesore and understand the functionality of it, so they're going to make your job difficult. You just kind of have to adjust each individual homeowner. And if you get there and there is a problem, call for permission before you move anything or change anything about the landscaping. Again, this is private property, and while we maintain it, we still have to take it. If you come up to a wet well or station which isn't maintained properly, at least attempt to make contact with the homeowner and let them know there's a problem that you need to trim around either component or any of the components in order to do, and especially to maintain it properly. If you can't contact the homeowner, I suggest that you don't do anything unless it's an emergency situation. So what we've done basically, very basic. We got lucky because this system as well as one can. So we're finished here, and we're going to go ahead and of some very important things from a lift station of any type, that it is on and in the automatic. So we make sure our main is on, our one controls on, and our pump brake is used if we have to use a power tool. I'll give it a check, sure it's times, shut it on and off, and shut that breaker off. The next thing we want to check is that we do that by placing quick pump, and our light is working. We get to auto. Closed and secure. We shut our panel and make sure that's secure. Same thing with the wet well. We already determined that the locks are in good. If they aren't, you can lubricate them, or if necessary, replace. Lock up your wet well. Components are crude off for a number one, to make sure nobody else messes around, and of course there's a safety with children or people messing that we aren't qualified to do so. So we've completed our POC and recorded for something that needed investigation. Dealt with right now. We'll make a note of that and come back later and fix whatever the problem is. Support services, your crew. If it's something that can wait, chances are you can come back at the end. Goal is and get as many of these as possible. So we're going to go ahead, what we would move and start all over again. Street. So a basic overview. Verify it's on the GIS system. Check is isolation valve and your service valve box. Make sure the isolation valve is off, your right of not leak operable. Move to the well, where you're going to check the condition of the wet well, the general condition. Check floats to make sure they're in good working order. Check the tie wraps on your float, they're not brittle, that your floats are clean, that the well we'll do later is in order well. Condoms, dental floss, ninja bars, stripper panties, these things can go in your pump, obviously, but we'll get into it. Once wet well has been tapped and your emergency tap has been verified that it's not in condition, you'd move to your control panel. At that point, you're going to power disconnect and sever power to the control panel to make sure one has been. You're going to go ahead and tighten up and give it a good, that you don't have any leaking, any of your relays have exploded on you, any evidence of arcing or anything that's going to cause it on fire, or worse yet, burn the house, cause malfunction. After you've done that and you've verified that everything is in good working order, you're going to go ahead and power it back up, and you're going to go ahead and fill the well up until it's working. You allow this to pump your. Again, your amp draw is a very good indicator whether or not the system is functioning with your supervisor as far as war on the red, black, and white lead amperage draw. At that, you're going to go ahead and make sure that everything inside your panel and your wet well, record your information, and then move to the next. Thanks for your time.